Here we are. Welcome back to Tuesday training for practitioners. I see everybody coming in right now. We got all the recordings happening. We got all the people coming in. Oh, look at all the beautiful people in the room today. Oh, hello, everybody. Valerie Zach is here. Her own name is on her thumbnail. Whoa, whoa, tech advancements as we roll, Val. I love it. Lori's here. Hey, Cheryl, nice to see you. Val, I see you talking, but I can't hear you while you're on mute, my babe. Nan is here. Gary's here. Natasha, nice to meet you. What's up?
Yeah, I never know what name's going to pop up. I use the same device all the time.
I just usually jump right in and change it for you. It's nice to see everybody. Welcome back. Yeah, of course, of course. Got so many people here. It's so great. Hi, everybody. For those of you who are not on camera, you're welcome to come on camera, or if you're not in a place where you can, feel free to just come off mute and chime in that way. We'd love to include you in the conversation. Also, the chat's available. Not my favorite form of communicating while we're here live and connected, but if that's all that you can do because you need to be quiet where you are, I totally get it. So please feel free to use the chat. Welcome to Tuesday training. I'm so happy to see you guys today. It's been so fun the last few weeks. I've really been enjoying our conversation on muscle tightness and digging into a case study last week, which is also so cool. If you're joining us for the first time, either here today or on the replay, welcome. We meet every Tuesday at noon Eastern as movement and manual practitioners coming together to win the game. I was going to say fight the fight, but we're not fighting anybody. We're winning the game of resolving pain permanently. That's what we're here to do. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to support you in doing that. I'm Gina Schatz. I'm your host. I've been both a manual and movement practitioner for 31 years. I know you can't tell, but it really has been that long. And I brag about that because I've been here for a minute and I've learned a lot. And the really cool thing about being here this long and learning a lot is this next piece. I'm still learning, guys. I am still learning. I'm still in the exploration of the body and what it's got to offer. And what do I learn about that? And how do I address it? And then, of course, how do I teach it and share it back with you all on Tuesday? So, hey, Anna, welcome. So I really want you to hear that after 31 years, still learning. So for those of us who are like, I want the quick fix, I want the answers, I want the checkbox, I want to be done with this train, you're in the wrong industry, my babies, because, and you're not, none of you are, because the body is an endless topic. This is our muse. We're here for life. So dig in. And thank you for those of you who are digging in here with me each week. I love that you're coming in here for more goods so that you can go serve your people. Have you guys been serving your people with the information you've been learning in Tuesday training? Have you been applying anything from Tuesday training to the work that you do?
People being served, yes.
People being served?
People being served.
Excellent. And you're tying that directly back to something we trained on here on Tuesdays?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the case study, certainly, because that was mine that I brought in. Yeah, every Tuesday training, I'm like, oh my goodness, that little nugget, that little piece, yes, absolutely. Especially, oh God, that month on muscle tightness. Poof, that was such a good one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, such a good one.
Excellent. Okay, I see heads nodding. I see thumbs up. Everybody else, yeah? Anybody else applied something specifically that you know is from this Tuesday training? I'd love to hear. What are you applying? Nan, let's see. Let me open up the chat. I want to read this juicy love letter. This looks like it's a good one. Trying and the body is from stardust, so it's all energy. How do the atoms react and combine? Is that a question, Nan, or is that a share? I can't quite tell. And I would love to answer a question if it's a question, and if it's a share, I love the share. It's a share. Okay, perfect. Love it. Yep, we are stardust. I love that. Anybody else? Anna?
I think for me, because the anatomy knowledge is so new, from your mastery program, which is awesome. But because it's so new, what Tuesday trainings do is just, it's like what Lori said, it just drops in a nugget that reinforces the learning. And, specifically when we did that case study for your client, all the strategic thinking that we did for that month that tied in a lot of muscles and a lot of types of tensions. that's sort of putting the knowledge, into a real situation, which helps me with the critical thinking that I need to do with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
So that for me is the benefit. There's a practicality to what we do on Tuesday trainings that puts, that reinforces or cements the video trainings or the live trainings that we do. So that's why I show up.
Yeah, I love
I
it.
second that.
Yeah, which part, Val?
The whole thing. Ditto. I mean, take the words out of my mouth.
Yeah, I love what Anna, I love what you said about the practicality of it too, because we get myself get so caught up in, I have my notes and I have my videos and I have all of the things. And Gina, you've said this exhaustively, repeatedly, and we'll continue to do that until we get in front of a person. My God, it's like, I don't want to say that all bets are off because we do have that knowledge, but it's like, oh, this is a body in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So the practicality of it, I love that language around it. Yeah, for sure. And how we implement that. Oh, so good.
I think it's, and again, we said this before, Gina says it all the time, but it's, and in our training, for those of you who aren't in our training, she exhaustively says, and sometimes I just want to like crawl through the screen and go like punch her, because like, okay, all right. But, she exhaustively says you can have all the notes in the world, right? And you can do all the listening and whatever, but until you get in front, and that, I found that's the key. And Lori, it's like what you said, it's not like all bets are off, but
All bets are on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Val, it's like game on. Yeah, it's not the bets are off. It's like, oh, now I have all of my stuff and game. Yeah, you're right. Game on.
Yeah. And if you don't live through those times and moments of, freezing for a moment, while the brain is trying to figure things out, then I guess you don't get to the other side. So Tuesdays trainings are really helping me, to see and understand the other side.
So good, Anna. I'm so glad you mastery practitioners have words for it. I love that too. And also, something that I keep hearing, it's worth to just repeat one more time, is that we all do need really rich training, right? So I didn't take that many CEs along the way that I didn't think had value in them, but certainly there were richer courses than others. And then, you take your training for the weekend and then you go back to your clinic on Monday and you work that out, and whatever that looks like for you. And most of the time we've been mistakenly thinking or told to believe that a weekend course is going to do the trick. And sometimes it does, depending on what you're there to learn. Most of the time it doesn't, depending on what you're there to create. And in our community, everybody here, what we're up to is we're resolving complex pain problems. You're not going to learn that in a weekend. You need to have a really solid, like, this is the anatomy to focus on, and this is what you do with that anatomy with your brain. And equal weighted, and now go implement that. Because you're not going to solve complex problems with a notepad. You're going to solve complex problems in the field, but you need to have tools and training and education to take into the field with you that you're armed with to pull out that information from your toolbox and then implement that. I think they're both really needed. Yeah. So I wouldn't want us to think, oh, I just need to go see more clients and do more repetition and have more Groundhog's Day experiences. No, we're not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying be strategic in how you learn and strategic in how you apply it. And that's how I solve complex problems. And that's how you guys are solving complex problems, which overjoys me, delights me. Anybody else have anything to, I love this share, by the way. Anybody else have anything on Tuesday trainings? Anything that's coming up for you?
I think it's an extension of the mastery program, actually.
Oh, really?
I I count on being here as much as I do on Thursday.
Why is that, Val? What's the value for you? What's
The enrichment and the deeper dive. Maybe a little bit more casually, but it's that reinforcement, the maybe occasionally a different angle or with the application when we work, like you said, the case study that we work through, the application, the strategizing, the anguish, and the thrill of finally getting to the end and saying, oh, click. And then it's like, sometimes it's like, now I'm going, okay, wait a minute, I lost a click. So, there's more to be done, and we'll never stop learning. I'm a lifelong learner. So,
yeah, no, I really appreciate that. In fact, I was just talking to someone in a graduate from our community recently, and I said, it's interesting that in Tuesday trainings, we'll spend this much time on a topic, but in group training and mastery, we spend this much time on the same topic. What's that about? And the truth is, as I've shared with you guys in mastery, because we're cramming a lot in.
Yes.
It's a rigorous curriculum. It's intense for a reason. So there is a little more, you're right. It's not that we are casual, right? We're not like militant in the mastery program, but we're there on a mission to like get stuff done. I got this much I get to show you in this much time. And on Tuesdays, we're a little bit more relaxed, but it's the same material where we spend a lot more time on it in Tuesday training because we have the time. Because we're not graduating in a year from Tuesday training. We can spend as much time as we need. And sometimes we need repetition and sometimes we need more time. But the content is, when we're solving complex pain problems, this is still the method. This is still how we roll it out. Hey, Judy, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Somebody else popped in too. I get to say hello to. Who else popped in? I just want to
Joan
make sure.
did.
Joan, hey Joan, nice to have you here. I don't see you, but nice to have you here. Awesome. Look at you, Lori, keeping track of everything. Thank you. Nan says, every person I work on is different. The education is going to continue to change as long as AI doesn't take over, and I'm not stretching as much since the lesson on the differences of tightness. Oh, my work here is done, Nan. Thank you. Which I need more info on. Oh, sure. So, tightness, by the way, I don't have a masterclass coming up on tightness. I'm going to just mute you, Bill. Our masterclass that's coming up at the end of the month, 8 days from today, by the way, a week from tomorrow, is on the lever system. And while we're not specifically going to repeat muscle tightness in the lever system, the value of knowing the lever system. Oh, hey, Lori, just right on it today. She's got it in the chat for you guys if you want to look at that. The benefit of knowing the tightness for the lever system is that the lever system tells us how the tightness was created. So we can identify a muscle tightness and what to do about the muscle tightness. And we did spend lots of time on that, valuable time. And I love that y'all were here in that conversation. And if we're solving the problem of pain, we still get to solve how did it get created, so that client doesn't go recreate that same problem once and again. Especially remember our conversation on Turgor. We don't want them repeating that. That's hella stressful for their nervous system. It's like a re-injuring, if you will. So we're going to talk about the lever system in our masterclass. I tend to have at least one, sometimes more masterclasses per year. It's open to everybody. You do not need to be on the mastery track to be welcomed into that masterclass. You do not have to be inside our academy to be in that masterclass. It is open to all manual and movement practitioners. So please do feel free to join us for that. I'm going to teach to you for about 90 minutes on the lever system, not only what it is, which I think a lot of us, especially if you've been coming to Tuesday training, you know what the lever system is. So trust me that I'm going to go deeper on all of that for you. And specifically when we're not in alignment, what that does to muscles. So if you're a movement practitioner, you really want to know that. If you're a movement practitioner that uses resistance of any kind, Pilates or personal training, you have to know it to avoid injuries. And if you're a massage therapist and your clients come to you because they're sore from their workout, you got to know why, so that they can stop doing that and you can do other work with them instead of doing the Groundhog Day from the Groundhog Day they're doing when they work out. So that's what we're going to cover in the lever system masterclass. It's a down and dirty, 90 minutes in of content, and then I will stay and answer Q&A for as long as you guys would like Q&A for that day. I'm committed to that. So please do join us. Oh, good, Nan. I hope you'll join us. And please feel free to invite your colleagues, even if they haven't been here on Tuesday training. Again, it's open. We get to all lift each other up because we all have a lot of work to do and we can only see so many people in a day. So our colleagues get to be empowered with the same information. And that leads us to community. So a lot of what I'm hearing from our mastery practitioners and mastery grads here today is that the community and working out case studies together, which we did last week with Lori's case study, and in 2 months ago or a couple months ago, actually, in the case study that I brought, working it out in community is how we all support each other in getting stronger so we don't squirrel. So having a community of practitioners, someone that you can call and be like, hey, have you ever had this with a client? Or what did I miss? I'm hearing this and I kind of froze in the face of that, with the client. I did this with the client. It did work. I did that with the client. It didn't respond. Client's body didn't respond. What do you think? That I cannot tell you how valuable that is. That is like invaluable. So, there's no paid friendship because that's not the definition of friendship, but you want to invite your colleagues. It's not competition. And I'll just say this in case it is out there anywhere. If you or someone who's a manual or movement practitioner is avoidant in sharing information, that's scarcity, and that doesn't work. Because there are more people in the world that need us than there are those of us to serve. You could be working 30 days a week, 12 months a year with a packed schedule and never get to everyone who needs support. You get to support your colleagues so that they can do the work that you also get to do, right? Your full schedule doesn't take away from someone else's benefit of also having a full schedule. We're all needed. So just be mindful of that. If you do hear a colleague come up with that type of conversation, you do it that what you want. I would bless and release, because I want to be in a room with winners. I want to be in a room with people who are striving for success, because that's how I'm going to succeed. And so I support you guys in making those choices for yourself as well. Be around people who are going to uplift you, who are doing incredible work and braving the challenge of learning how to do that, right? Okay, so mic drop over. I would love to see, hey, welcome, Rhonda. I saw you come in. I'd love to see if there are any questions that are on your minds, on your hearts, on your notebooks, any questions that have come up from any of the tightness conversation that we talked about, from the case study that we went over last week, if you were here, or any other question, by the way, any other question that's come up. It's been a minute since we've done Q&A. So I'm going to give you guys a minute to formulate your questions and just say, even in the description in the Zoom link, it says, 30 minutes I'm going to train you, and then 30 minutes we're going to do Q&A. We used to do that. We used to do that a lot, and the Q&A was amazing. And it was a little bit of a potpourri, also cool. And I'm happy to be in that mind space as well. And it felt more cohesive, speaking of our community, to have everyone on the same topic for some time and just contribute. And I recognize that that also means we didn't have an official Q&A. So perhaps you've had a question that you haven't had an opportunity to ask while I've been driving the conversation towards a certain topic. And I wanted to start us out today with open Q&A. We're not really starting, we're 20 minutes in, but starting right now, from now until the rest of our time together. Does anyone have a question on anatomy or client work? Anything? Go ahead, Cheryl, you first. I love it. Oh, I can't hear you, my darling. You're not muted, but I can't hear you. You got your headset. Okay, great. It's gonna take you a minute. Okay. All right, great. We'll come right back as soon as you're on. So any questions, just there's no limit is the point. Client questions, anatomy questions. Maybe you took another training and you don't understand what you learned. Sometimes that happens too. We go for a weekend training and it was fast and furious and we're like, wait, I only retained 20% of it. Maybe I've taken that training and I can support you in what to do with that tool too. So please feel free to ask any question that you've got. Go ahead, Cheryl, I hear you now.
You can hear me. Okay.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, this is an odd headset for some reason. If I don't shut my computer down, it doesn't. I can hear you from my computer, but you can't hear me. So it's just an odd thing.
Well, you're crystal clear right now.
Oh, good. Just going through thought processes this week with the last case study. And this popped into my head and it may be silly, but I know it isn't.
Okay, good.
Can contractile and tensile tightness happen at the same time with opposing, opposite sides of the lever?
Oh, with opposite sides of the lever. I thought you were going to ask in the same muscle. With opposite sides of the lever, yes.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you see how it could happen?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But I just didn't, we never talked about that. And I just thought through that with the last case study with toes curling under, that could be a contractile tightness. And then the opposite side could be stuck in that lengthened position. So I was thinking maybe that could be, the tensile, contractile and tensile on the top.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And do you have a second? I have more to share about that. Do you have a second part of your question?
Well, the only other thing that I was trying to think through and kind of got a little confused in my head was, you had mentioned about we need to check those the trio that maybe, the top trio of those plantar flexing muscles. But then I wondered, like, is it because those are the plantar flexors, those are the ones that are bringing on that tightness with the toes curling under? Would it make sense also, like in my mind, I think, wouldn't it be easier to test or to check on the ones that are more weak? Because you can give them a job to do and they can't do it, so it'd be a weakness. So I don't know. I was just wondering, like, how do you, it's just kind of going around in my head. Okay, do you check the ones that are, the contractile, or do you test the ones that, in the contractile, usually, in my mind, with my language, it's, they're more tight, they're more overworked, right? They're shortened. And with the tensile, if that be the case, would be more lengthened and weaker, not doing their job. And, would we be, wanting to check on those as well?
It's a great question. So the first part of your question was, can both sides of the lever have a tension in it, contractile on one and tensile on the other? And the second part of your question is, and then which side do I work?
Yeah.
Okay, I love this question. We actually talked about this in Mastery practitioners. Anybody I feel like I want to volley it over, Cheryl, just first before I chime in with final answers. Any Mastery practitioner want to share what you know about this? Is a really important question, because and Val, I see you're getting ready to start. Here's what I want to presence for all of us. Keep this in mind. Strategic thinking for the wind. Okay, keep this in mind as you're in question answer, problem solution. The answer is always in the anatomy. So you get to know the anatomy first before you can solve the problem. We've said this a few times every week. I think I say it at least once, right? And so I love this question, Cheryl, because until you knew that there were tension types, then how would we know how to solve that problem with that client with the toes and the stress in the muscle in the calf? We wouldn't even really know what was going on to be able to solve it. So we do get to know the anatomy first, and then what do you do about it? So that's always where you want to be. And I'm stressing this mostly for Mastery practitioners, because y'all are in case study land right now, and you're like, oh, I just do this, I just do that. Slow down, pause, breathe, feel your feet. Use your anatomy and then solve the problem. Don't jump too fast to conclusions. Your anatomy will support you in getting there. So I love the question, Cheryl. Awesome. Valerie, you have a thought on that? On tension tightness?
Contraction is the action. So you'd go to the action first.
Okay.
That's where my mind goes.
Exactly. Yep. So we know that we know that stretching doesn't exist. Do y'all know that? Everybody here know that stretching doesn't exist? Anybody here still think stretching exists?
Well, in a contractile muscle, it can.
Stretching exists?
Well, you can stretch a contractile muscle.
Okay. So
contractile tightness.
That's okay. So here's what I'm hearing from your response, Cheryl, is that you probably weren't here with us when I was on this tirade for about a year. Stretching doesn't exist. And it's in one of our anatomy principles, there's a downloadable guide, and we talk about that. And it's a bold statement. And people are like, what do you mean stretching doesn't exist? I'm actually a stretch therapist. Okay, I got it. Here's the truth. Exactly, Natasha. In the brain, there is no command for stretch. So anything that would be stretched is either in response to the opposite side of the lever contracting. We're going to talk about that in the lever system masterclass. Or something lengthening or stretching is done passively to the body by a practitioner. So if there was a command in the brain to stretch, we all right now could be like, go ahead, stretch hamstrings.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, that can't happen. It can only happen in response to something, an outside input like a practitioner, or the opposite side of the lever where the action is, the action being contraction. So Val's response to which side would I work on, the tensile stress side or the contractile stress side, if both were present in a lever system, which one would I work on? The action side, because you got to change the brain in order to get the body to do something. The body's not a standalone object. It's wired from the brain, especially musculoskeletally. So that would be the answer. And I love this setup because as we were heading into Val's answer, which I didn't even know what it was going to be, I emphasized we get to know our anatomy. When you have your anatomy foundation broad and strong, it'll support you in solving the problems, right? It's not a dig that you don't know enough anatomy. I did not say that to anyone here. I'm supporting us in why do we keep going back to learn anatomy even when we're in an expert level practitionership? Because there's more to know, and that's where the answers are. We get to know the anatomy and the function of the anatomy, be able to identify when things go wrong, and have a wicked tool set and skill set to resolve that. And the resolving of it isn't necessarily in the skill itself. Like, here's this tool, massage therapist. If you come to me for the weekend, I'll teach you this tool, go apply it, and it'll solve all your clients' back pain, is the biggest hogwash statement we've ever been fed. But what we do learn is what to do about the anatomy and when it goes wrong. And it's really, I might actually teach a masterclass on that exactly. That order of troubleshooting makes it so much easier. Val, you're a yes? Okay. Yeah, it's like following a formula so that we don't squirrel too far, because complex cases are by definition complex. It's easy to like squirrel out and not be like, well, do I do this? Do I do that? I don't know. Blah, 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 blah. So easy to do that. So easy to do that. I did it for a long time, right? Until I figured out the through way. And the through way is know your anatomy first. So I love this, Cheryl. Does it support you now when you hear that stretching doesn't exist? That if both
I understand what you're.
You get what I'm laying down? Okay, great. So yeah, so we would address the contractile side first, because that's the one that's wired directly with the brain. And then you are absolutely correct. The other side needs to be returned back to contraction. It also needs to do its action, for sure. I want to emphasize one thing too that I heard you say, and that I'm getting a little split hairs here, but it's worth to bring it up because it's in the juice of your question. A contractile stressed muscle does not necessarily mean it's strong. And a tensile stressed muscle does not automatically mean it's weak. Okay, so we want to also know that. Again, it's part of our foundational anatomy so that we know what the body needs then to resolve the complexity that it's presenting with. So sometimes lever systems are just lever systems gone awry, or sometimes tightness is just lever systems gone awry. Other times it is due to misuse. I wouldn't say overused, because I don't really believe that a muscle can be overused. I think we all underuse them way more than ever overusing them, but we can misuse them, which seems like overuse or repetitive strain. And again, I know that it sounds like a splitting hairs conversation. I'm acknowledging that, but I don't want you to think that, oh, you shouldn't contract a muscle regularly and consistently because you'll overuse it. That's not true. But you can misuse it by being out of alignment and then strain and fatigue the muscle to the point where it does need to rest. That I believe is true. And the same thing goes for lengthened tissues. Just because they're lengthened doesn't mean they're weak. And if that were true, let's go back to the stretching doesn't exist. If it were true that a lengthened muscle meant that it was weak, then those of us who believed that stretching was a good protocol up until now, what you're saying then is you're an accomplice to weakening the body's musculoskeletal system. So that's how we know that statement isn't true, because we know that there is value in doing some passive assisted stretching. Okay, so we don't want to just default to because it's lengthened or stretched, it's weak. It can be, but the can be is the distinction between resolving the problem and missing the final resolve of the problem. Because if it's weak and you missed it, you get to add strength, because most of us don't have enough strength, especially intrinsic strength. And if it's not weak and you address it, you're running through minutes on the clock because your sessions are timed. And you might miss something else that the body needs. So the can be is important. Like, how do you know that? You get to be able to solve that as well. So let me just check the chat here. A lot of, let's see. Nan says, in my mind, I would put pressure on any trigger points to get those muscle spindle cells to let go. You could certainly use trigger point therapy. I love trigger point therapy. I studied it for a long time back in the day when we were using ozone spray and all the things to get them to lengthen before we used ice, before the spray was taken away from us. I mean, we're talking old school, right? I love trigger point therapy. I learned a ton about referral pain by Janet Travell's book. I highly recommend it. It's one of the most expensive textbooks I ever invested in, worth every penny. Love it. Yeah. And here's my overall thought on trigger points. If you know how to do trigger points right now, go ahead, use them. If you don't know how to release trigger points right now, I don't know that that's going to move the needle for you. And I'm a girl who studied it and spent a lot of time and money learning trigger point therapy. How much trigger point therapy do I do right now? Negligible numbers, if ever. Here's why. Because in our method, in the SHOTS method, we're resolving how the trigger points got there in the first place. Trigger points are a symptom of something gone wrong. So I don't want to address the symptom without also addressing the source. What went wrong? How did that trigger point get formed is what I want to know and what I want to conquer. I don't want to just have awesome thumbs and great effective use of spray to get the trigger points to release. And again, I said, if you know trigger points, go for it. And yes, it does release some congestion in muscles. Not all contractile stress muscles, though, have trigger points in them. So then what would you do? Again, trigger point therapy is a tool. Tools are amazing. I have lots of tools in my toolbox, but not one tool solves all the problems. Not one tool solves all the problems. Our method isn't even a tool. Our method is a method to get to the source of the problem and eradicate it. Awesome, Nan. I'm glad that you work that and that works for you. Cool. Cheryl, did we answer both parts of your question? Did we get you some clarity?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Oops, I should just keep the chat window open. But when I open it, it's so, do you guys ever, anybody use Zoom lately and you notice that the chat window situation changed and it just makes you guys so much smaller, and I'd prefer to make eye contact. So Nan says, right, so the stretch to determine the type of tightness. What's your question, Nan? Do you stretch it to determine the type of tightness? Or I don't recognize your question. If you could, do you stretch it to determine the type of tightness? No. In fact, there's only one type of tightness that should be stretched. The others, definitely one other, you could damage the tissue if you stretch it. And the others, stretching wouldn't really create a resolve for you. So no, you don't stretch it to determine the type of tightness. For those of you who are on the newsletter and you got the newsletter, thanks for doing the pop quiz. Did you like that pop quiz? And what do you do for tensile stress? Do you stretch it or do you not stretch it? I saw your answers come in. It was super fun to play with you guys that way. Okay, what else? What other questions? Anna?
So I'm starting to pay a little bit more attention to the pelvic floor.
Okay.
And understanding the importance and the value, not just in the hammock support of a lot of our organs, but also how it ties into breath. And I tapped into some training, I suppose, a master class anyway. And so I'm a movement, I'm a yoga teacher. So what was interesting there is they talked about the importance of internal rotation. Because we spend in yoga for sure so much time in external rotation, and external rotation it tightens the back part, the rear part of the pelvic floor, and really does not the front part of the pelvic floor stays quite elongated. They talked about the importance of balancing the pelvic floor so that all parts of it can lengthen and contract, and as they're supposed to do. And I'm curious, I guess my question is, why is there so little internal rotation in the yoga world? It seemed important, when they brought up internal rotation. And I'm like, yeah, they're right. There's hardly any ever internal rotation. And I'm just, is the importance of internal rotation valid? It seemed valid. Then why is there so little in the yoga world and yoga asanas?
Okay, so your question is about why is there an imbalance in your ideal, an imbalance in medial rotation of the hips in yoga? That's your question?
Yeah, and is it important? Is it as important as external rotation or lateral rotation? Because we seem to do a lot of lateral rotation, and yeah. So is it as important?
I certainly have an answer. Any other yoga teachers here want to chime in? Lori, do you have a thought on that?
About why the poses, why we don't do a lot of medial rotation of the hip? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Goodness, that's an interesting question. I never thought about. We do straight up. We do lateral rotation, certainly in the warriors.
And
I mean, look, is it valuable? I mean, yoga aside, for the lever system, you gotta have both to balance it, right? We know that. Like if it's all lateral rotation all the time, think about our folks that walk at 10 and 2 all the time. Like there's an imbalance in their lever system in lateral rotation and medial rotation. So aside from yoga, it makes sense to have both balanced. I don't know why I don't know why yoga poses.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree that there needs to be that balance. I was just never aware of it. So how many years have I been teaching yoga? It's never been my focus. So I guess I'm asking Gina to validate, or if in fact internal rotation is equally important to if medial rotation, let's use that word, medial rotation is equally important to lateral rotation. And I think I need to be changing some of the things that I teach. So
okay, I'll happily weigh in. And hey, Lori, thanks for weighing in. I'm happy to see you, Lori. I haven't seen you, Lori Solomon, in the chat. I haven't seen you in 100 years, and I'm happy that you're here. And Lori added in the chat ideas about twists, that often a twist will include that. Sometimes twists are for spine, sometimes they can include the hip. Here's what I'm going to offer you guys. Hey, Lori, nice to see you. Here's what I'm going to offer you. What muscles do lateral rotation of the hip? We're back to our anatomy. The answer is always in your foundation.
Minimus, medius.
No, lateral rotation.
Lateral. Oh,
deep six.
Yeah, deep six.
Deep six, 6 of them. Do they do any other job, or is deep six primary job, main agonist action to do lateral rotation of the hip?
Primary.
No, that's 6 guys.
That's their job.
All on one job. 6. Okay. What's the main guy that does medial rotation of the hip?
Piriformis. Oh, medial rotation. The gluteus medius.
Yeah. Is it his main job?
No, it's not its main job.
Who's the main guy that does medial rotation of the hip? So there's my point.
Iliac.
If we know out of the gate that there are 6 main muscles that do lateral rotation of the hip, we're designed more for that action than we are to actively introduce medial rotation. Can you include that to equal out the lever system? Absolutely. But the body's design tells us what it needs, which is why when people default in a standing position that's not neutral, they default to lateral, they default to 10 and 2. It's not as common. You can see it, but it's not as common for folks to stand both at midnight, right? It's not as common because there aren't as many muscles that do that job. And so you could get into other maybe, biomechanical, scientific conversations with other bodywork masters who might say, oh, well, there's so many striations and chemical inputs and outputs, and I'm not your girl for that. What I do know is that the body's design is perfect. I don't need to screw with it. All I need to do is understand it and be reverent to it, and then in service to it. So I know that out of the gate, there are more muscles that do lateral rotation than medial rotation, and the body's designed to move. So if I'm going to design movement for that body with the lever system in mind, of course, there's going to be more lateral hip action, lateral rotation of the hip action than medial rotation of the hip action, just based on its design. There's more of one than the other by design. Do I need to keep it neutral in when I'm not moving, like standing with toes forward? Of course. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about movement. So would there be less medial rotation of the hip available in a balanced movement environment like yoga than there would be lateral rotation of the hip available in a balanced movement environment like yoga? Yes, because the design tells me that.
Wow, it really helpful and interesting perspective. Thank you.
You're welcome. I love the questions. I love being hot seated. Do you guys feel like the heat's off of you?
I like that it always goes back to the anatomy. I mean, of course, that's why we're here, but you're like, okay, what's the anatomy of that? How many muscles? And I was like, oh yeah, just like Anna said, I'm like, oh, click, click. There's my clicks.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so just to take it one more step further, for those of us who are solving problems, this is not your question, Anna, and that's okay, but I want to take us there. So when you're solving problems for folks, which we're not doing in a yoga class, I love you, yoga people. I am one too. We're not solving complex structural issues in a yoga class. We're creating balanced movement in a yoga class. That's the point. When they can't do the balanced movement in your movement offering, then you need to step them aside, fix the problem, and get them back to balanced movement. That's the whole point. That's what we do in our method. So for those of you who are solving those problems, like you notice someone can't do the balanced movement, what do? You do get to address the muscles that do medial rotation of the hip. And we know that they have secondary jobs that also often take them offline and get them into trouble. We know what glute med usually does. We know what TFL's real role is in walking. Medial rotation is not their main job. So when they're in trouble doing the other things that they're supposed to do, which is a structural job, we do get to address those muscles and strengthen them for their action of medial rotation. Absolutely. That wasn't your question though, Anna. Do you see the difference? Because we talk a lot about glute med in the method because it has this structural connection that usually, like, come on, guy, come on, glute med, we need you. Come on, baby, we need you. So we talk about that from a complex something went wrong issue, but you asked about balanced movement. So you see where they're different? They're like, yeah, okay, great, beautiful, love it. All right, we got time for more questions. I kind of like being hot seated. It's keeping me on my toes, loves. Cheryl.
There is a lot of stretching in yoga. How do you justify that? Like, how do you, like, you go to a yoga class and you're stretching and holding stretches. And so we know that that's not always best.
We do. Anna.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here, Cheryl. Sorry. And by the way, I love that Gina is actually answering questions, because I got to tell you, in our training and in the mastery, all she does is ask more questions. So this is fabulous.
Okay, I'm gonna qualify. I'm teaching them to be thinkers, Cheryl, and for everybody else. So I'm not a total party. Go ahead, Anna.
No, I love this. I love this. But so the way I've changed my teaching is, yes, we're stretching, but we're stretching in response to a contraction.
Mm-hmm.
So we always contract first, and I actually cue the contraction.
Good.
In order to get the lengthening. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot of stretching, but if you think even, starting a practice and they're laying in Shavasana and then you ask them to stretch. And I just wanted to say, Cheryl, I never believed when Gina first said stretching doesn't exist. I was like, she's so full of shit. Until I laid down on the floor. I literally laid down on the floor, after whatever training that was. And I'm like commanding my body to stretch. I'm like, come on, stretch. There's no stretch, right? It's in response to a contraction. So there's, you have to contract first.
Right.
Yeah.
Anna, I love you answering this question so much, because it's true, Cheryl. We did have that. She talks about me being a hardy. Oh, okay. So yeah, we had that. And then you came to your own knowing about it, Anna, which is so gorgeous. And that is the distinction between yoga teachers who are skilled at mechanics and movement and those who are taught to teach yoga. They're not always the same. Did you have a follow-up, Cheryl? Did I talk over you?
No, I mean, I've been to many yoga classes, and no teacher ever says contract the glutes to get to, to lengthen the psoas,
Right. And that's because they have 20 hours of anatomy, which I taught regularly, yearly for 13 years. I still, yoga teacher studios and teacher trainings have changed since the shutting down of, studios across the world, but, since our last few years here on the planet. However, I would still teach them. And that is where the line came from. How can I make this content crystal clear with very little time to get it across? Yoga teachers, stretching doesn't exist. Stop teaching stretching. And they were like, what? And then I'd give them the anatomy that backed it up, which really only led them to know that they needed more anatomy. Right. And if you ask every yoga teacher, they will tell you that they didn't get enough anatomy. But if you ask every massage therapist, they'll tell you the same thing. So the point is, you can't learn a lifetime's worth of anatomy in whatever certification program you're up to. You get to learn more. But that is a big one, Cheryl. And I would say that it's not just for yoga teachers. It's also for other movement practitioners.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the ones who say, oh, did you stretch before your run? Or after my client did, circuit training, I stretched them. And I'm thinking, but to do what? Right? Like, I want them to know, because this is what it does and this is how it works. And did you stretch them, or did you teach their body how to maximize their lever system? Because ideally, I don't need to stretch anyone if they're using their lever system the way they're designed. But are they? Or are we just hanging out on lengthened muscle tissues, which isn't really teaching movement at all? So there's, and anyway, I can go down a rabbit hole on that one for sure. The chat's blowing up, probably from yogis. Nan says, I've never had a yoga teacher talk about contraction. I know. Until I get my hands on them, or my mouth on them, actually, me either. That sounded weird. That's not what I meant. We don't do manual work in yoga, but yeah, until I can pour into them, exactly, Nan, me either. I bet a doctor would say the same thing. Say what? That they should stretch first, or say that you shouldn't stretch without contraction? Because doctors know less than we do about movement. Movement doesn't kill you. Iyengar yoga demands active contraction and asana. It does, Lori. I started as an Iyengar teacher, or Iyengar student, excuse me. And when I went into yoga teacher training and then into flow classes, I was like, what the hell just happened here? And I was so disillusioned, because my introduction to yoga was through Iyengar. And I was like, oh, this is like what I do on the table, but on a yoga mat. It's freaking awesome. Let's just do this. Why isn't the whole world doing yoga? And then I realized, because Iyengar yoga is this much of the whole world. It's not the whole world of yoga. We got a problem, Will Rogers. And so that's when I started going into, let me just go through yoga teacher training so I can have the credentials, so I can speak with you instead of at you. Because it sounded like that a little bit, like, you're doing yoga wrong, is how I was being heard. So instead I just became a yoga teacher. So I'm like, guys, I get it. And when I saw how much anatomy they had, get this, in my yoga teacher training, they weren't going to teach us any anatomy. Guess who taught the anatomy portion of the teacher training that I was in when I went to yoga teacher training? That would be me. That was the initiation of me teaching anatomy to yoga teachers. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, what? So yeah, it's a biggie. Natasha, what's your opinion on stretch training courses and classes? This is a great question, Natasha, because I know that there's a lot of that out there. You know, there's Stretch Lab, which I know, Anna, you sent me an article about Stretch Lab. I actually recruited Stretch Lab for a wellness event that I was doing. It was this massive, thousands of people attending, and they were a sponsor of the event. And I was, you know, like doing prayers in the back and trying to figure it out. But I asked, and here's what I would say to you and all of us. I would say this to you, Natasha, and I would say this to all of us. We need to qualify now what we mean by stretch. Because if we're doing passive assisted stretching to someone, if we're stretching their hamstrings without having them engage their kneecaps and actually contract the quads, we're not doing them a favor to their hamstrings. But if we're offering what Stretch Lab offers, which is PNF, that's a different type of stretch. And it does something different to the body. It's not teaching stretching as part of movement. It's creating a phenomenon, because that's the definition of PNF. We have a masterclass on that too, by the way, in our academy. So I would say my opinion on stretch training courses is, what type of stretching are they teaching you? And do they know the anatomy of the lever system while they're teaching it to you? Because if not, I don't know that I would rely on all the information they're sharing. If you don't know the anatomy and you're teaching me something to do to the anatomy, I don't trust what you're asking me to do to the anatomy. You need to know the anatomy first. That's my value on that. Nan says about anatomy. Let's see. I've never had a yoga teacher talk about contraction. I bet the doctor would say the same thing about anatomy, meaning they wouldn't know to contract first. Yeah, probably. Doctors, contracting a muscle or not contracting a muscle is not life-threatening, guys. Western doctors are here to save our life. They're not here to give us quality of life. And we need to be more informed about quality of life, so that the clients and patients that we serve stop asking their doctors for answers that they don't have the answers to. If they need answers about stretching, movement, muscles, etc., we need to know that, so that they can get the answers from us and not have back pain that they run to their doctor for, who doesn't know the anatomy about how the back pain was caused or will be resolved. We get to fill in our knowledge. We get to be, like, you know, top tier experts in that body of information, because it's not life-threatening. So let's save the doctors from needing to know answers to questions that they don't need to know the answers to questions for, just like none of us knows how to do open heart surgery. So let's not burden them with needing to have answers, or rolling our eyes at them because they give the wrong answers. They don't have any more anatomy than we did in our yoga teacher training. Hey, how about that? So let's just be the experts, and then, you know, we can raise the community knowledge about who to go to for these types of questions to be answered, and they'll know it's not their doctor, it's us. And we need to know our anatomy for it to be us. So here we are learning our anatomy so that it can be us. Gary, BU research shows a 3-second stretch is most effective. Who's BU, Gary?
That's Boston University.
Okay. And what type of stretch did they say?
They just said any type of stretch. If it's only 3 seconds, then the body is not requiring the antagonistic muscles to balance the stretch. So you can do, instead of doing this, you can do this, 2, 3, this, and you get much more lengthening going on. And in that, this will be interesting for you, Anna. Interesting, in the research, they said a yoga stretch will take actually 26 seconds before the body actually releases the muscle. So it's about, it seems to be about safety. Too much stretching encourages the antagonistic muscles to come into play. But in yoga, because you're holding that stretch, the body will only release it after 26 seconds of realizing it's safe to do it. I mean, kind of interesting new research on that.
Do you have that research, Gary? Do you have access to that? Can you share it with me?
I can't. I can look it up because, you know, someone else recently said, I want to see that stuff. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, Anna, with the work that you do. But holding a stretch for a certain period of time seems to be effective. And that seems to be the answer. Watch your people after 26 seconds and see if the muscle doesn't release to a longer stretch.
Gary, I can answer that from a practical point of view. If we're laying on our backs with our leg up, you know, trying to stretch the hamstring, first of all, bringing that kneecap up and contracting the quads like crazy, and making sure that that's in place first. And the hamstrings in particular take a while to finally, you know, relax enough to lengthen a little bit, even while the quads, you know, are contracting wholly. So yes, I would say certainly in that situation with the hamstrings, they take a while to lengthen. And where are they lengthening? You know, are they lengthening just at the sit bones? Are they lengthening just down by the knee joint? You know, you're always trying to aim for lengthening in the belly of the muscle. But yeah, I've had that experience, definitely. But contraction first. Contraction first.
Right.
Go ahead, Lori.
You know what, though? Not all the time. I'm hypermobile. I can get into that easy peasy. I can contract. I can lengthen. Like, it depends. I think it also depends on the mobility of the person. Like, if you've got 100%. A hypo, then for sure it's going to take a little bit longer. Look, I can do that pretty lickety split, and it doesn't take me 26 seconds.
Yeah, that was really the question I had, Gary, why I wanted to see the study, because we don't, you know, whatever the details are the details. And were they talking about stretching in response to contracting, or were they just talking about initiating lengthening in muscle spindles and then they would therefore lengthen? And
yeah, that was my understanding. But I'll see if I can find the piece for you.
Okay, so if it is that we're just going to lengthen muscle spindles and they will then respond by lengthening. To Lori's point, we know that in hypermobile constitutions, are we really lengthening the muscle spindles, or are the ligaments just allowing the bones that they attach to move further away from each other? And it looks like a stretch. Right. So there's so many questions I have about that research. And look, I love research because, you know, I have research on fascia that changed the course of a lot of things that I did and how I understood the body. Research is great, and I don't always land heartily on all of it. It depends on what did they actually study and under what conditions.
And then, what the methodology was. Yeah, how they did it.
Exactly. So again, and it's perfectly brought up right after Natasha's question about, you know, what about stretch courses? What type of stretch? Right. We need to qualify that now because it's now advancing, and in a lot of the ways, like yoga and massage, where everything was now called something new. But is it really, or is it just a distorted version, or is it actually something new, right? Some of it's legitimately just an advancement. So we need to now keep our eye on that around stretching. And I feel like, I think it was Nan who said, you know, until AI takes over. I think it was AI that saw my article that stretching doesn't exist, and then they took it. And now everybody's changing what they know about stretching, which is why I'm like super freaked out about AI right now. So anyway, you'll see that on the top of our newsletters. They're all written by me. I never run them through AI. I don't let my assistant run them through AI. We don't freaking do that. And I know that we're still being listened to all the time. So that's fine. But anyway, it's all our content and information, just so that you know that. And I'm always learning. So I'm happy to look into more research. That hour went by super fast. I'm happy to have been put on the hot seat and to support you guys with specific questions that you had. It seemed like y'all were on the same board today too, which was even super fun. It's like we're creating a hive mind here on Tuesdays, which I just so love and enjoy and appreciate. So thank you all for your contribution today. Thank you for sharing this video and replay on the YouTube channel with any of your colleagues that you know would also benefit from some of the answers to our Qs today. And also thank you for sharing the masterclass information. I'm looking forward to seeing each one of you next week as we're talking more about stretching and muscle tightness and the lever system and what to do about that. So I will wish you all a great, successful week. Thank you for the incredible work that you're doing in the world. And I'll see you guys here next Tuesday. Bye for now.